All right, folks. So as you can see, we are back in the gun room for another discussion. This time, this is going to ruffle some feathers here. I'm going to show my true Fudd. All right. Uh, this time, I want to discuss why I believe that iron sights are still better on a handgun than red dots. Now, please listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. Okay. I believe iron sights are superior and are better, and they make more sense in a military context for a military handgun. All right. Now, I'm not saying for self-defense. I'm not saying that red dots aren't faster to pick up. I'm not saying they're not easier to learn how to use. There are definite benefits for both, but I got 10 reasons. I'm going to let you know 10 reasons. We're going to talk about this, and I'm going to give you the 10 reasons why I think, specifically in a military context, for a war fighting force, for a combat handgun, why iron sights are still superior to pistol mounted red dots. Now, on rifles and stuff like that, those have been used for decades, they have proven, but they still have issues. And a lot of this, if you do not have the logistics as a fighting force to maintain these optics, because the things I'm going to mention about with pistol mounted red dots apply to rifles also. If you don't have the logistics to maintain, to replace, to purchase batteries, and not only purchase them, but get them to the front, if you are struggling as a military, at the time of filming this, the Russia-Ukraine war is going on, and currently Russia is winning. Okay, I know that might break some people's hearts in here, and I don't give a shit either way, but I'm just telling you, at the time of filming this, Ukraine summer offensive last summer failed. It's been a year now of 2023, failed, and the Russians have gained significant territory lately. So by all accounts, they're winning. My point of saying that is, if you're the Ukrainian army at this point, or insert losing army here, whatever, and you're struggling to get ammunition and troops and weapons to the front, what makes you think a battery for a red dot sight is going to be a priority? Hence the backup iron sights. If red dots were so superior, why would you need backup iron sights? You know what doesn't need backup iron sights? Iron sights. You never see people, I got my backup irons to my irons. No, they just have their irons. Okay. And that's on the list, and you'll hear me repeat that. But in a warfighting context, now, in a everyday carry where you can go home, and I have, as you can see, I have several. I just didn't get the other ones out, but this was the first one, the easiest to get out of my safe. I have several handguns with pistol mounted red dots. Now, if you were able to carry this all day, and you're able to change your battery out once a year, and this is not being slogged through a muddy trench or beat up as you're getting in and out of an armored vehicle, or dropped because it's in your holster all day and stuff like that, these will be just fine. The nature of warfare is a lot different than the nature of concealed carrying your pistol to Walmart, okay, or to the gas station, and I carry a pistol everywhere I go. I got a pistol in my pocket right now. I am wearing basketball shorts around the house, and I got this little puppy. So I carry a pistol everywhere I go. Some of my buddies watching this, they know, they do the same thing. I carry a pistol everywhere I go, okay? But I'm going to talk about why, and I'm going to show you some evidence of what supports this. Now, I'm going to give you 10 reasons, and then we're going to talk about some of the guns I have laid out here. Maybe I'll support my argument. Maybe I won't. Maybe you guys still argue with me. If you grew up shooting red dots and you do not know how to use your backup irons, which are technically not backup irons on a pistol because they come standard. This gun without the red dot comes standard with these sights. So there's that. But the first thing is, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. So, you know what doesn't need batteries? Iron sights. You know what doesn't fog up in human conditions? Iron sights. You know what's shockproof? Iron sights. You know it's waterproof? Iron sights, because you'll see people do tests. We're going to test if this is shockproof, ironproof. Waterproof, shockproof. We're going to freeze it. We're going to drop it. You don't see anybody doing that with iron sights, right? Because if iron sights like freeze up or get knocked off, you just chip the ice off, and they don't freeze. They don't get fogged up with humidity. They don't get the emitter clogged up and you can't see stuff. They don't get all clogged up with dust. If they do, you just go and blow it out, and there's your iron sights back up. So there's that. Okay, you know what doesn't add weight to the gun? Because again, and I specifically speaking of handguns, because I know a lot of AR-15s will come with nothing, slick tops, and you put your backup irons, usually, which are Magpul flip ups. Those are probably the most popular, and a red dot and stuff like that. But again, it goes back to my argument. You know what doesn't need backup iron sights? Iron sights. Okay? They don't. You don't see people mounting a set of backup iron sights on their pistols because they already come with iron sights and they require little to no maintenance. And I'm not speaking of these. This is a different thing too. This is too fragile, in my opinion. Again, let me please listen to the words coming out of my mouth. Let me reiterate this for the people in the back that can't comprehend. I'm talking about a go-to war handgun. This is perfectly legit for a competition gun. I even got another one here. Perfectly legit for a competition gun. Now, can all these be pressed into that? Can you carry this around? Sure, but with repeated beating up, carrying, whatever, because I'm gonna tell you, I was in the Army and I was on tanks and we carried Beretta 92s and they got carried a hell of a lot more than they got shot. They got carried so much the finish was coming off of them and they got banged around. At the time we had, I don't know if they still do, we had these green shoulder holsters and we walked everywhere and they got banged. When you're climbing on the tank, they got banged around. When you're climbing in and out of the tank, they got banged around. When you're taking them off and setting them on the ground to take a shit, they got banged around. They got beat up a lot. Okay. If you are carrying this and you're able to maintain it and stuff, but this little fiber optic thing is fragile. These fail just from shooting a lot. Okay. From shooting repeated recoil, a lot of these can crack and fail. And that's why in the case like this gun, they sent extra fiber optic for you to replace it because they expect it to fail. All right. You know what doesn't add, where was I at? You know what doesn't add weight? I might have mentioned that one, iron sights. You know what doesn't cost extra? Iron sights. No extra cost on the gun, comes free with your iron sights. You know what doesn't add height to the gun? Iron sights. Look at, let's go back to this Springfield Armory. Doesn't add, look how much higher. You're adding an extra inch or whatever to height. Now, people complain about height, width, weight, length of the gun, complain about size, especially when it comes to concealed carry. Now, for war, you're not worried about really the size of the handgun. A full size, like this one, full size duty handgun is just fine because you're not concealed carrying it. But you are adding height and weight, as I said before. All right, number 8. You know what doesn't have glass that you can break? Iron sights. And again, I'm not talking about the fiber optic width for competition purposes. And I dig these. They really stand out. I'm getting older. My eyes are getting worse and they really stand out. But again, in the context of a go-to war handgun, a handgun that you'll be carrying, by the way, for defensive purposes, because you'll be carrying a rifle usually for offensive purposes. If you got to go to your handgun, you're screwed. Okay. You are screwed. That's basically your way to fight your way to a rifle. And I dig these, but again, I'm talking about standard fixed, not adjustable rears either. Standard fixed metal sights. such as this one on the current M17, fixed, substantial, beefy metal rear sight, dovetailed metal front sight. And we're going to dive more into this gun in a minute. But they don't have glass that you can break, because a lot of times when they drop these, womp womp, glass breaks, and then you're ass out. In my opinion, they kind of make the guns look like shit. And that is a personal opinion, okay? I don't like this big shit sticking out. By the way, they also add width. This one is wider, not by much, but it adds weight, width, height, fragility, batteries, so it requires logistical support. It adds a whole bunch of stuff, in my opinion, negatives that outweigh the positives that basically the only positive for this is quicker target action, quicker shots on target. Now, if you are in a gunfight, that can be the number one important thing. So I get it. And I am not saying that this is not a superior sighting system, especially for long distance and for quick target acquisition and quick shots on target. Vastly superior to iron sights, okay? Vastly superior to iron sights. But again, it comes with that comes a bunch of negatives that you're going to have to deal with. They're a lot more maintenance and labor intensive than iron sights. They just are. And number 10, as I stated before, you know what doesn't need backup iron sights? Iron sights. So the simple fact that handguns nowadays, and not all of them do, I know there's going to be exceptions. People are going to go, the Glock comes with them, they don't come with iron. Whatever. You're a fool, in my opinion. If you run a pistol mounted red dot sight, you're a fool if you don't have backup irons, because there's so many things that can go wrong with these. Hell, the motherboards can just fail. The batteries can go dead. The motherboards can fail. If you get an EMP, this thing is done now. That's good Lord. If you got a whole other host of problems if you're getting hit with EMPs. But my point is, I have seen these fail all the time, randomly. Battery compartment, pops out the side. You lose the screw, thing is dead. Oh, I got to use my irons. If you don't practice with your irons, if you're a new shooter, you go out and this is what you buy and you slap a red dot on it, whatever pistol it is, you slap a red dot and you're like, I'm shooting 20,000 rounds with red dots. How many times have red dots failed on the range? How many times you drop it, cracks the glass? There's a whole bunch. The electronics can go bad. There are just so many things that can go possibly wrong with this, much more than iron sights, much more even than the fiber optic. Because if this fiber optic breaks, I've seen people shooting competition. Now remember, I shot competition for 30 years. I've seen people that prefer these style sights without the fiber optic in it. It'll break, or maybe they'll just purposely take it out, and they like to see light come through the little hole there. It's an easier sighting system for them. Okay. And also, not to mention, seeing how handguns in general, especially concealed carry handguns, but handguns in general, I don't personally believe there's such a thing as an offensive handgun. If you need an offensive weapon, you better have a rifle. So these are defensive weapons. These are defensive tools. These are for personal defense, or like I said before, to fight your way to a rifle. These are for defense only. Handguns is what I'm saying, okay? And seeing how 7 to 15 yards, usually, if you could shoot with inside that, you could technically shoot. If you practice enough, you could technically shoot without sights. You just point shoot and hit your target, especially nowadays with the capacity of some of these. What is it, 16 rounds, 17, 18 rounds? Something like that. Oh God, 19 rounds. 18 round magazine, one in the gun, 19 rounds at 9mm. If at 7 yards, you cannot point shoot this. Hell, you could close your eyes and point shoot, and I guarantee you're going to hit a paper size USPSA target. Maybe I'll try that. A USPSA target a couple of times. You don't even really need to use your sights at 7 yards and you'll score hits. So again, a lot of this was pointed towards military style handguns, because there's a lot more things you have to think about than, oh, this is my concealed carry gun. I got to make sure I change my battery every year and yada, yada, yada. Regardless of what sight you use, they all or 99% of them require some type of power of batteries. And that's the other thing. If you can't get the batteries, what you gonna do? You better learn how to use them irons. And there's a lot of them kids coming up nowadays. They're so used to this, they have no clue what the iron's even for. And then the time to use them is not when you're in a gunfight and your shit goes dead. And now you're like, how do I even use these suckers? But let's go over a couple more. I'm going to show you a couple more guns on why I think iron sights in the military context with what military handguns go through, which is a heck of a lot more abuse than a standard civilian handgun. Because if you pay money for this generally, you're going to take care of it. You're going to maintain it properly, and you're not going to abuse it. Some people do, but most people don't abuse their guns. They try to take care of them because they spent their hard-earned money on it. When you're in the military, you're issued a gun. You don't care. You just carry it around. You just want to, if it stops working, you take it to the armorer, they fix it. That's how it is. But here is the current U.S. Army military sidearm. This is the current U.S. military. Now, it's a commercial version, but it's identical. Current U.S. Army sidearm. Look at this. It has a provision for a red dot, right? That was one of the things they, thumb safety and all the jazz that they asked for when they ordered this gun. But I want you to see the substantial, especially the rear, the substantial rear sight on this gun. All steel front sight, dovetailed into the front. Again, provision for a red dot. So you can mount a red dot to this. Now, is the U.S. Army issuing this with red dots? No, I'll bet you they're not. I will bet you they're not. Somebody in the U.S. Army let me know. And I'm not talking about spec ops, and I'm not talking about if the local MPs on a certain post allow them to have red dots. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about for the general soldier that is going to be issued a handgun, like armor crews, like truck drivers, like pilots. Now they might get different guns, but I'm talking about officers, stuff like that. I'm talking about if the Army buys, I don't know, 354, 500,000. Let's say they buy 500,000 of these as they're phasing out the Berettas. If they're buying 500,000 of these, you think they're buying 500,000 red dots to mount to this? No. So the vast majority of these military handguns will look just like this when they go to war. If they have to go to war, they will be carried into battle just like this. I bet you the only reason they have the provision for this is because the spec op guys were like, we want to have the spec op guys probably put their 2 cents in, and Delta's like, we need red dots on ours because we're super high speed, special ninja warriors type of shit. That's probably what that is. But your average MP, helicopter mechanics, crew chiefs, armor crewmen, artillery crewmen, if they get all that, will get it just like this. I almost bet on that. Because if you have, I know in my unit there was 60 plus guys, and almost every one of us, now some of the headquarters guys, I don't remember if they carried a pistol or not. They probably did. Our NBC NCO or supply NCO. So we had 60, 70, and that's small compared to like an infantry unit or whatever. We had 60 or 70 guys, and we probably had that many, maybe a few extra Berettas. And our armor was busy enough replacing recoil springs, whatever else. But could you imagine if they had to go through and sight in if they put a red dot on every pistol in the arms room and they were sighting them in, they had to sight them all in, keep them sighted in, stop that they're dropped, they have to replace them and re-sight them in, they have to go through and change all the batteries. They're too maintenance intensive, as opposed to the pistol sitting in the rack like this, sitting in your arms room rack just like this, requiring no maintenance, no batteries, no fragile sights. So if I'm wrong, somebody let me know out there, but I doubt that they are going to put, for the vast majority of these handguns, that the U.S. Army, a go-to-war handgun, this is essentially a go-to-war handgun, the only difference is the markings, okay, is not going to get red dots. Again, the Delta guys, the Rangers, the super special squirrel dudes will probably get all that stuff. Otherwise, I bet you 90% of the handguns, if we have to go to war, will be carried just like this. Again, we touched on this one. I think these are more for competition purposes, again, but in this case, if the fiber optic fails, and again, I've seen them fail quite a bit, especially in USPSA matches and stuff like that, and IDPA matches, you still have the iron sight there, the sighting system to use it. And as mentioned before, some people prefer it with that. Now, revolver. I'm not saying that a revolver we should go back to revolvers, but you think you're going to damage that rear gutter sight? Is that shock proof, freeze proof, waterproof, everything proof? You're not going to, I mean, good Lord. So this has the ramp front sight, but look how thick that front sight is. You would have to legitimately damage this. I would almost guarantee you in daily cop use, soldier use, concealed carry, you will never, ever, ever, you will rub the finish off of this, but you will never damage this. You could probably drop this son of a bitch on the concrete on the front and it would flatten it down a little bit, which would change your point of impact before you would ever break that off. That is a thick, substantial, milled into the barrel ramp front sight and the gutter rear sight. Now, these are crude sights compared to, and I forgot to get out a pistol with an adjustable rear sight. I'm not talking about the ones with the adjustable rear Bomar sights and all those stuff, because those are more fragile also. But this is a cruder sighting system. Boom, like that. Just get the sights grossly lined up, a gross sighting system. This is not a fine target sighting system for this defensive revolver. Again, 7 yards, you can easily hit a man-sized target in the chest with these sights. And they're indestructible. And they don't require batteries. And they don't require any maintenance on this. Never maintenance on this. If you drop it and get a chunk of dirt on it, again, brush off. You don't have to worry about, I gotta dig dirt out of that emitter right there, if it doesn't scratch the glass or whatever else. Now, let me show you one more pistol. This is a Walther P38. It's the aluminum frame one, but it's not the P1 police model. This was made right after the war. This one was actually made about 15 years after the war, when they were still designating them the P38. As you can see right there, P38 cal, maybe you can see it. This one was made in April of 1960. Can we pick that up there? Maybe, no. April 1960. So at the time of filming this, all right, this pistol is 64 years old. It just had its 64th birthday. Look what's still sharp as the day is long. Look what's still on there. Iron sights. Look at that. And this one's these are even dovetailed, which is kind of cool, where the Army was still using, 1911 GIs, the US Army was. Look what's still sharp as the day they were made. And the finish is coming off because, again, I believe these were police pistols, but they weren't the P1 designated police pistol. And the finish, they got more finish wear probably than they do rounds through them. But my question to you is, do you think that same dot, 64 years later, is that same dot, if this had a dot on it, would still be alive? Would it even be functional? Would it be in 64 years? Are those dots, are you going to replace them? Are the motherboards going to go bad and you got to send them back to the factory? What if the factory's not around? Again, I'm speaking of go to war, especially if you're using this in case somebody gets into your trench and stuff like that. Same sights, 64 years. And they're just as good as the day they were issued, minus some finish wear. As far as a maintenance, by the way, I'll probably talk about this too, why I think the heel mag release and the mag catches on these type of guns and AKs and stuff like that are superior in a war fighting context. That's another video. Do you think that the red dot sight would still be around after 64 years? And I don't know what the lifespan of the modern red dot sight is. Now, with all that being said, I do believe that this is a faster sighting system. I believe it is inherently easier to use, does not require as much practice, especially for newbies. I believe it's, again, faster on target, and I believe it benefits people because, again, I'm starting to use these. I'm not saying that they aren't the current thing. I'm not saying they're not here to stay. I'm not saying they're not superior in several ways to iron sights. I'm saying overall, given how much maintenance that these require, especially on go to war military handguns, why iron sights, they might require a little bit more practice. You might have to get out there and use them and learn how to shoot the gun. And if you go, it's a lot more, it's difficult for us guys that grow up. We never had these. We just had irons. So we've learned to shoot irons over the last, 30, 40 years. And now throwing these, it's a learning curve. But I'll bet you it's probably the same learning curve as guys that grew up with this. There are now kids out there, guys, I call them kids, guys out there that have only shot handguns with pistol mounted red dots or with pistol mounted red dot sights on them. And they got backup irons, but I guarantee you they never use them or never practice with them. They're just so. And when this thing fails, I will just put the target in the window somewhere and you'll get hits. Yeah, that's true. That is absolutely true. So again, I'm not saying that this is not a faster to get shots on target faster, which is key in a defensive situation where you might have to use your firearm to protect yourself or somebody else. Getting shots on target first and fast is probably the number one thing you need. And that right there facilitates that, especially it's easier to use, especially quicker. There's a quicker learning curve with this than there is lining up irons. But you can do it with irons. 100% you can do it with irons. There's been thousands and thousands of people been killed or shot with handguns with iron sights until these came along. So that's why I think overall in the war, as I've laid out before, because of logistics, mainly because of logistics, because of fragility, because of all the issues of durability that come along with these. When you are in a trench in Ukraine, Russia, Korea, whatever your battlefield is, this sighting system is going to be much less maintenance intensive, and it's going to be much more durable than this on a handgun. And it's not necessary on a military handgun, I don't believe. On a defensive, on police use, on defensive civilian uses, on the spec op guys and all that kind of stuff, sure. But on the general military issued handgun, I think they're useless. I think that iron sights are far superior for all the reasons I laid out. Now, let me know what you guys think. Please put in the comments down below if you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm right, if you agree, if you disagree. Offer up some other issues that you've encountered with pistol mounted red dot sights. But this stuff kind of applies to rifle mounted red dot sights too. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And thanks for watching. We will see you next time.